Hello, hello. One moment here, just getting sorted. This is the piece we're working on today. Hi everybody, Mary from Country Chic Paint. Just getting set up here. Okay, got some folks tuning in. This is what we're going to be working on today. Just going to give everybody a second to sign in. Sorry I was a minute late, apologies. Just getting a comment set up here, going to give everybody a little bit of time to get on. We're going to be working on this guy today, and I've got the paint color picked out. I'm going to go over some great prep instructions. Alright, okay. Just going to wait a little bit longer, maybe a couple more. Okay. Alright, so just going to start now. I'm Mary from Country Chic Paint. I'm going to be showing a quick example of how to do a trickier surface. This has all sorts of fake pieces. This is not a real wood dresser, or nightstand, sorry. It was a great $20 thrift find that I picked up on Facebook Marketplace. It's got some plastic here. This isn't real, that isn't real. I think these are real, so the trim is real wood. Just going to go over a couple of tips on how to tell what you're working with. We do have the surface prep guide on our website as well. Just surface prep, Country Chic Paint. You'll be able to find it that way. I need this tutorial. Yeah, it's a little tricky. It's hard to tell when to prime, when to sand, if you need to sand and prime, what kind of surfaces are going to take paint really well, what might need just a little bit of work. And then also, what's your budget, what time do you have, kind of factors into that as well. So I hope I can help, and let's get started. What I did last night is I did 2 coats of primer, clear bonding Country Chic primer. I don't have it in the quart size, but I recommend if you do a lot of pieces, maybe have that on hand, a nice quart. It looks peachy and creamy, but it does dry clear. Very handy if you want a distressed finish. You still want to show off that wood, but it isn't real wood. So I did 2 coats everywhere. I made sure I cleaned thoroughly first with vinegar and water. Just a very easy, safe, natural cleaning solution. Removed all the hardware. I had scuff sanded anything that had come apart on me. I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but that, not gonna move. This lighter area, that's just like chipping plastic stain. This entire piece could probably come off if I wanted to take it off, but I'm gonna leave it and paint on top. This would look really nice accented with a wax or antiquing dust or a glaze, so that is exactly what I thought when I was going to pick this up. These lines are just going to pop when I'm done. And I was thinking like a bright bohemian kind of style, maybe with some gold, but I kind of just chickened out and want to go classic light linen, lazy linen. So this is just a really nice, very gray. It might look white in the camera, but it is gray. So this has had about 12 hours or more to dry. I really recommend maybe doing 2 coats of clear bonding primer. It's a clear liquid, you never know if you miss a spot. Best applied with this handy sponge here. If you have a brush, that works as well, but this just leaves like a nice flat surface for you to work with. Let it dry completely, don't skip that step at all, and then just a couple of thin coats of paint should transform this guy nicely. And then I'm going to do probably a bit more when I'm done painting. So let me know where you guys are coming from. If you have a YouTube account, you should be able to just punch that in. Let me know who's watching. Always love to see. If you haven't, we've filmed a couple of videos for the past couple of weeks while folks are at home. Might be a good idea to check those out if you just have some general questions on how to start painting. If any of those particular projects are something you want to do. We did lampshades, a couple of other projects. Really cool to start out with. I want to take care of this first. I'm not going to go in with my bigger brush first because I don't want to goop all the paint in. So just going to start really lightly with an artist brush. I did the same thing with primer because again the sponge probably wouldn't have worked well into those details. So this handy little artist brush really did that for me. I'm working with a plastic piece right now. So the prep for that is always primer or a little scuff sanding if that works. Thin coats is always best. That's what helps with adherence. You don't want to make it thick. It won't dry right. And it will take much longer to dry. So I don't mind if there's some gaps. This is going to dry really nicely, and I want to go thin so I can come back around and do a second coat while I'm in this video. The first coat of paint, when you do a project, you really want to let that sit for maybe an hour or two overnight if you are working with a trickier surface. But for the purpose of this live video, I'm just going to maybe blast it with a hairdryer real quick. So thin coats will help that work. Lazy linen has pretty good coverage. I think I won't need anything more than maybe two, maybe a third touch-up coat, because I like to do them really thin. And make sure, oops, don't have a cloth, that's okay. Make sure you don't get paint stuck in the holes for your hardware. That just makes it harder later to get them back in. We got folks from Liverpool, New York, Florida, Alabama, really nice. Okay, so we have somebody with an old hutch with some combination materials, that's good. Always try and look out for seams, anything that might look like the veneer is glued on. I can tell instantly that this isn't real wood because it's very, very firm, very slick, non-porous. It does have little seams where the glue has been there. I did scuff sand this because I wasn't actually sure. If you're not sure, just try sanding. I did start sanding right here. And I'll see if I can bring this a little closer so you guys can see. I started scuff sanding right there, and as you can see, fake wood, and then this like weird plastic coating that looks like wood. So you can keep sanding, but you'll just get this hard pressed particle board. And here's a little up close. That's all chipping and plastic, so I made sure I got most of the chipping of that stain off before I primed. So I got that all set up. Oops, focus you again. Mind the mess, sorry about that. So just really thin coats is important here. Oh, Kentville, nice. All right, I am coming to you from BC, Vancouver Island. It's about 11 o'clock when I should have started. Always best to paint in some natural light. So I like to do it in the middle of the day. And I'm already home, so that's convenient. So I want to get all the sides, lay down a very good foundation of paint. Don't want to work too fast because that's when you start messing up. I really want to preserve like the sharp details here, so just want to make sure that that is nice and tidy. And it is plastic, so I want to make sure it had plenty of time to dry. Make sure that paint is really on there. Just going to come around. Try painting with the left hand. Not so good. Yep, there we go. See, I missed some spots coming from this side. So if you had a lot of detail, it might take longer. I did an armoire once that had full detail. Some of those pieces were plastic. When you see some of these really nice old pieces, especially some kind of 50s or 60s piece, there's a good chance it might have some factory made pieces that aren't real wood. So just keep a lookout for that. The really nice detailed ornate stuff, if the piece is really light when you're lifting it, probably not solid wood. So just keep that in mind. I don't see any less value in painting something that has all of these unique surfaces. I like to reuse. The whole point is to upcycle something if you like it. And I loved this nightstand when I saw it on a curbside photo on Marketplace, so knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. Didn't care what it was made of. But it helps to have the primer handy when you bring home stuff like that. It kind of gives it a weird whitewash effect with the first coat when you're going this thin. Some people are going for that with their own pieces. Not for this one though, but just a thought. Oh, too much paint there. kind of just stippling it on in some areas that have a lot of finer detail, or those corners, because I don't want it to pool up into the edges. It really makes a difference in the long run when you have nice, crisp, clean lines. And just make sure. All right, so I'm going to let that dry a little bit. And I also wanted to share just a quick tip. If you find that the piece is very, very slick, there's the alternative if you don't have the clear bonding primer. Sometimes in a pinch you can always use Zinsser products. The water-based ones, like the 123 Bullseye, works like a charm. This formula does come in white, so that might even help if you are painting a lighter color, changing from a dark to a light, might even help that. Just kind of same application, really thin coats helps with this, maybe just one coat. But I like to just stick with this primer because it is eco-friendly and health-conscious. And just for watching, wanted to share a coat. I didn't have time to paint a sign. This is laminate 10, if you can see that. Make sure you use that for 10% off Country Chic Paint website. Get that out of the way. And I want to tackle the main part now. So I've got my 1.5 oval brush. Really love this one. And I think I'm going to start with the drawer front, right here. Thin coats, always. Every part of this has primer. I'm not going to do the sides. I think I would like to line the drawers with some colorful paper maybe. That's a later step. So just make sure you prime everywhere you plan on painting. Be thorough. The 2-coat rule might help in case you miss a spot. If you're going to all the trouble of prepping, you might just want to make sure it's done right and very thorough. So 2 coats is kind of my rule. Not recommended or necessary, but it's a good idea. And if you're looking for added tips on how to use our primer or just getting started on painting, be sure to check out our other tutorials. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Always get updates on the new videos. And we do have plenty of tutorials on our actual website. And lots of examples. So I'm trying to keep nice drawer fronts nice and clean. The beveled edges, I'm trying to keep them nice and tidy. You can paint messy if that's what you like. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason to that. I just kind of want a smooth finish. You'll find that with chalk style paints like these or clay based, anything like that, they do create texture. That's kind of the hand painted look is what chalk style paint was for. But if you're not looking for that, there's a couple of tricks. Sanding with fine grit paper in between coats always helps, like a 220 or higher grit, probably not much higher. Just want some good coverage. I'm not worried if the spots are peeking through because I already plan on coming back with a second coat. It looks patchy, but it really fills in with that second one. Oop, gotta get the bottoms. Has anybody used lazy linen before? Anyone watching right now? Let me know. I'm always interested. I never went for this color before because I didn't see the point in getting a nice light gray, but depending on your decor, and mine recently, this is just a really good, nice basic neutral. Then you put some bright flowers with it, or maybe you have some standing decor that looks good. Ooh, nice. Okay, I'm happy with that. I am going to take this out though, just so I can paint the front. Oops. Going to take care of that, put it in a safe place. And now I'm just going to get the outer side. You'll notice I vacuumed in there. Make sure you clean up your pieces really well before you start painting. You don't want to work dust into your finish. Very important that you start with a clean palette, as new as possible. This was, like I said, outside someone's curb. They were listing it. I think it sat outside for a couple of days. Never know if something's living in your curbside find. So proper prep and clean. This just had a couple of old dead spiders though. I used to be very squeamish. Oops. Don't want to get paint drips. Now you know why the apron's so messy. I use it as a napkin. If you do accidentally get paint where you don't want and you're really quick, you can just wipe it off with water. It's just a simple water-based paint, very easy to clean up. If it does dry on you though, you could just try scuff sanding if you catch it on pieces of wood that you don't want to catch. Alright. Thin coats all the way to the edge. And I would let this sit, if you were at home working, probably for maybe 2 hours before coming at it again. If you go to paint a second layer and you find that this one is tacking up on you or coming clean off, you do need to give it more time to dry. It's not always an indicator the primer didn't work, but maybe you didn't wait long enough. The dry times are a rule of thumb, but you got to keep in mind that if you're working in cooler temperatures, that can delay dry times. Hotter temperatures can make paint a little harder to work with, so that's just a little thing to consider. Room temperature is always best. Just making sure those are filled in. And I'm going to pop this one out with the nightstand. Okay. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to do the front here. I went in with the artist brush with my primer to make sure I really got into those grooves. When I finish painting, I actually plan on using a bit of wax to really accent and give some character to this piece. So I will be buffing, I will be working a new layer onto the paint. I want to make sure that I have it on really well, so I had to make sure that the primer was on really well. If you plan on just leaving it as is, you might not have to be so focused, but I knew that this would be subjected to a little wear right before the paint had a chance to cure. So I have a really good sticky primer, and if you have another water-based primer at home that is compatible with our paints and it is designed for adhesion, and you're working on a piece like this that has laminate or melamine, particle board, veneer, or just some weird faux coating that isn't wood, try that, or the clear bonding primer. The paint does a pretty good job on its own, but sometimes needs a little bit of help. And you want to do the project right. So really thin coats, it's almost a whitewash, but I'm not watering it down. Just want to make sure that it's a nice thin layer and nothing's gobbing up in the corners on me. I'm using, if you're interested, I'm using about a pint of lazy linen here. This is just what I have on hand. It's not even full. If you're doing 2 nightstands, I'd say this whole pint could take that. You wouldn't need much more. Nightstands are a pretty good project if you're just getting started, especially if you just, maybe you're looking at the same oak tables you've had for years, and it'd be cool to update them. Maybe you did other parts of the house and you just, the furniture was the last thing to go, so try painting it up. Nice in the corners. I'm very happy I did 2 coats of the primer. Feel very confident that this is going to work. I didn't do any sanding, by the way, if you guys are wondering if you need to prime before sanding. I used to when I first started because I wasn't too sure, didn't have enough faith in the primer I was using, but it does work. You don't really need to sand before that. So I haven't sanded on any of this except those test spots where I was trying to find out if I was working with real wood. This is just a nice slick surface. Primer is a good option if you don't want to put the elbow work into actually sanding something. If you don't have an orbital sander or a paint stripper or something to remove those old stains, primer is definitely the way to go. Just make sure if you're going over an old coating, it does work with the oil-based paints, but if you have anything like chipping lead, you definitely want to get that taken care of. We have some information on our website about that. The primer is not supposed to seal in lead paint quite like that if it's chipping, but just take a look at the surface prep if you're curious. We do have a flow chart, lets you know when you need to prime and when you don't. raw wood, recently sanded wood, even just a slightly shiny coating can usually be painted over. I did do a cabinet door example once where I didn't sand or prime, and it did stick pretty well. If you're doing cabinets though, I wouldn't, again, cut steps in the prep. I would probably adhere to all of the rules. Kitchen cabinets are a big project. Very rewarding though. And I've got this propped up on cans. I'm not sure if you can see. I've got it propped up on cans. I just don't want to get paint all over my table. So if you have 4 extra ones, those are always handy. I've seen people use books. As a kid who went to library technician school and university, I don't like the idea of using books, but treat them with respect, use paint cans. Or maybe you have, I've seen trolleys, people have just a nice flat piece of wood with wheels on it. Those are very handy for transporting stuff like this if you do it all the time. But like I said, paint's pretty easy to clean up, so not too worried. Gotten paint all over this table. Okay, make sure I got the bottom all nice. Just nice one directions. You don't want to create a whole bunch of added texture. I don't like to cross hatch my brush strokes, just up and down. Drying pretty quickly. Bet you that's already, yeah, it's drying pretty quick. Make sure you catch spots like this. You don't want to see it's coming off. You don't want it beating up on the edges or that will dry. You can always sand that off later. Like I said, some people like to sand in between coats. Always an option, especially if you've created some unwanted texture from your paint. So, just an idea. Ooh, missed a spot there. Also, oops, forgot the underside there. Too much texture. Oh, we got Diana Saunders from Williamsburg. Hey, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Hope you guys are getting some good weather in Ontario. Heard it snowed. That's crazy. But it's Canada. That happens. Okay. Oh, just in case you didn't know, sorry, I forgot to mention, the primer sponge, the sponge that I used for the primer, you could also use this for the paint if you wanted. And then if you wanted to seal with a water-based top coat, like our clear coat or a top coat, you could use the sponge as well for that. Just rinse in between. It's a reusable sponge, very handy. It paints nice thin coats. You won't have the streaks from a brush. These brushes don't really leave that kind of streaking if you're doing just nice thin even coats, but this thing is really handy for spindles. If you have a lot of chairs you have to do, definitely recommend the sponge. Well, that coat's just going to be a bit too thick on that side. It's a little tricky to turn the piece around, but I've just done a very thin coat on the side here. I think I'll just touch up the fronts of the dressers just to show you, or sorry, the drawers, just to show you what a second coat would look like. Because this might take just a bit more time to dry than we have today. But I'll do a second coat tonight, and then I will be able to show you guys what the waxing effect looks like tomorrow. So just gonna touch this up here. All right. go grab one of those drawers. Show you what a second coat will look like. Paint that back in. Alright. So it's kind of got this nice all over effect. That's what first coat stuff looks like. Gonna go in with the second coat on the bottom drawer here just so you guys can see. Okay. Again, really thin coats. Because I've only given it about 10 minutes to dry. It's rather hot in here, so I'm not too worried. I'm going to be very careful. Try not to overwork it. Nice. Yeah, if you find out it's coming up on the edges, got to give your paint more time to dry. Like I said, 2 hours is probably best for the first coat, and then just 1 hour after that. If you're working on a hot day, maybe just half an hour, 40 minutes. Kind of play by sight. Sometimes when things are dry to the touch though, it's not always quite ready to paint. So you just got to really watch as you apply that second coat what it looks like. If you have unwanted texture, sometimes I accidentally draw paint up all the time. We'll let that dry. Don't come back at it until it's dry. And then you can either gently sand it off if you didn't want the texture, or just paint right over it. Easy fix. Don't want to get paint in the screw hole again. There we go. So first coat went on nice. The second coat that I didn't give everything a lot of time to dry, still looks really good. So that's a bit of a difference there. I'm not sure if you can quite see with that angle, but I can tell. Maybe against the drawer. Yeah. Nice and opaque. Chalk style paints, that's why you want them. Just great coverage. Just a note, if you find that working with a lighter color, all of a sudden yellow kind of stains pop up, you might be working with something that has a bit of bleed through, or maybe a contaminant. One thing I considered with this piece, since it was old, since it did come from kind of unknown origins, it could have been in a smoking home. Nicotine is kind of a common thing to be embedded in furniture, especially something porous. There is porous parts to this. Some of these are real wood. If that started to come up, then I would need to go over with a stain blocking primer, because the clear bonding primer is for adhesion, not for stains. I think that Zinsser bin though, yeah, this is a stain blocker and adhesion, so this kind of helps with both. Keep in mind it's not the healthier alternative, but it helps in a pinch. If you have any questions about bleed through, you can always ask us. Just the website, we have a chat, drop a line there, or check out the tutorial to learn more about our primer. So I don't want to add too much there because I'm getting some paint coming up on the sides. I'm just going to let that sit. And I think we'll have to let everything else just dry for a little bit before I can go at it with the second coat. Tomorrow, I want to show you what I'm going to work with. Alright, so just one more time, there's that code, laminate 10. Apologies, that's on a post-it note today. That's 10% off the website, countrychicpaint.com or .ca. We're a Canadian company, but we do ship to Canada, the United States. Just wanted to show you that I'm going to be going in with gray wax over those details. So that's this really nice medium gray, very cool. You can see where I'm going with that. I'm going to nice antique it up. Got my wax brush handy. It's nice and clean this time. So stay tuned for tomorrow, 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to go in with gray wax over top of this once it's had some time to dry and had a second coat of lazy linen. Make sure you subscribe if you want to get that notification tomorrow, or if you're already subscribed to our newsletters, you'll get that that way. I hope you guys have a really good day. I'm going to sign off now, and just happy painting. Bye now.